Hello and welcome to another episode of the Medicine Show. Today I want to talk to you about a particular herb, and it is a medicine that has been used for a great many centuries. It has been heaped with praise by ancient poets and sages and writers, and it's also something that you're probably not going to find if you go and look for it at your local health food store or other place that sells herbal medicines. And that is this stuff right here, which is the extract of this plant right here, the common violet. You can find violets in the writings of the ancient Greek poet Sappho, or in the medical writings of Galen from classical antiquity. You can find violet in the Middle Eastern writers from medieval times, or Culpeper's herbal from early modern times. And you can find violet in Maud Greaves' modern herbal from the 1930s. But you probably won't find violet in most places that sell mass-produced herbal products. And that's because violet, like so many other weeds, is more a medicine of the people than of the companies. These are violets. They tend to be found pretty abundantly where they're found at all, and because there are hundreds of different species, each of which is basically a variation on the same theme but adapted to a different environment, they can be found in lots of places. Like other common weeds, violets have not received the sort of commercial attention that some more exotic herbs have. And because they have not been as large of a commercial product in recent times, there isn't as much scientific research into their clinical effects as there is with some other herbs. However, we do know quite a bit about the chemistry of violets, and we do have a very long history of use of violets as medicine. Viola sororia is a very common species of violet where I live. It's called common blue violet, although most of us would probably describe the color as purple. But not all violets have this typical color that people associate with them. Here in Eastern North America, there are also white violets and yellow violets, and violets that are combinations of white, yellow, and or purple growing wild. Pansies are a cultivated member of the Viola genus, and they can be quite large. They also come in a variety of different colors. Because they're very hardy plants, sometimes pansies will escape cultivation and grow as a weed, like these flowers that are blooming in the cracks of a sidewalk in downtown Lexington. If you look at the flower of a violet, you can see that it has 4 petals that are basically the same, and then it's got kind of a different looking one down at the bottom. That one's technically called a spur. So these are the showy flowers of the violet, and in most species these are pollinated by insects and produce seeds. And here is a side view of that flower. Here's a look at an entire violet plant. It has several leaves and a few flowering stems coming up from this root system. And this wrinkled part of the stem that the roots come off of, this is generally found right along the ground or just under it. When weather conditions are not very good for the violet, these roots will dry up. This part can break off, roll downhill, find a nice suitable place, and then put down roots again. And so I sometimes like to say that violets are slightly migratory. Not all violets have this heart-shaped leaf. Some of them have a more finely divided lobed leaf. Those kinds are sometimes called birdfoot violets. And there are hundreds of species of violets. Some of them, like this one, don't have a very aromatic scent to them. Some of them have noticeable or strong wintergreen scent to them. If you want the purple color in your medicine, you just use the flower part. But all parts of the plant contain the parts that make it work medicinally. All parts of the plant contain the salicylic acid, or in some species also methyl salicylic acid, which is what gives it the aromatic wintergreeny type of scent. These are violets growing in their usual habitat in disturbed ground. In this case, lawn that has not been sprayed or seeded with anything or had anything done to it. And these guys just show up, and this is what they look like. At this time of year, they flower all together, produce a very large display of flowers. Later on in the year, there will just be flowers here and there, and there will also be a second kind of non-showy flower that's hidden underneath the leaves close to the ground, which pollinates itself. And this is the leaf, sort of what people might describe as heart-shaped. I like to say that in ancient times, people believed that violets were good for preventing heart attack because the heart shape of the leaf was considered a signature, a sign that it was created for that purpose. And nowadays we would say that violets are good for the heart because they contain salicylates, which prevent the formation of blood clots. And I believe that hundreds of years from now, people will think that our current theory is outmoded and superstitious, and they will have some other reason why they think violets work. But what doesn't change from century to century is the fact that the violets do work. This is salicylic acid. It takes its name from salix, the willow tree, in which it can be found in abundance, but it also occurs in lots of other plants, including in all sorts of violets. Salicylic acid is pretty soluble in water, and it is the parent molecule of a class of substances called salicylates. And salicylates, generally speaking, relieve pain. They are anti-inflammatory. They inhibit the formation of blood clots, and they reduce fevers. And this slightly different molecule is methyl salicylate. The only difference between them is, if you look over to the right side of the model, you'll see the letters CH3, a methyl group. And that is really the only difference between these two molecules. Their medicinal properties are pretty similar, but their physical properties are different. Methyl salicylate is more soluble in oil and a lot less soluble in water, and it has a very aromatic smell. I associate the smell with wintergreen, so it has a wintergreen scent to it. Some people describe it as being minty or medicinal, but it is a sweet aromatic smell to it that the regular salicylic acid does not have. And just for comparison, here are the two molecules side by side. And you can see on the salicylic acid on the left, there is just an H, a hydrogen, attached to the oxygen. And on the methyl salicylate, there is a carbon and 3 hydrogens, a CH3, attached to the same oxygen. So I have some violet flowers, and I want to preserve them by making an extract out of them. And again, this is for personal use. It's really lovely to have the violets and have the colorful extract. If you're making large quantities, you want to make a 5-gallon batch of this stuff, it might be a lot less labor intensive to use the leaves as well. But in this part, I'm only using the flowers because if the leaves are in it, it will turn brown, even if there's just 1 or 2 in there. So I started out with 4 ounces of the fresh flowers, and that's dried up quite a bit because they're mostly water. And to that, I'm going to add about twice as much of some good locally made distilled spirits, local specialty here in Kentucky. And then I'm going to put a lid on that and let that steep for a while. Now usually with making tinctures we would let them steep for weeks. Because this is such delicate material, it really is probably going to be about as strong as it's going to get by this time tomorrow. This is the finished tincture, the extract made from soaking the violet petals in the alcohol. And as you can see, the petals themselves have lost their color and it's all gone into the liquid. And this is after several days of steeping. But like I said before, most of the steeping happens in the first 24 hours with this particular remedy because they're so delicate. Violets can also be made into a tea by pouring boiling water over them and letting that steep for 20 minutes. Another good way of preparing violets for medicinal use is to cook them in oil. And this is especially good with those violets that contain a lot of methyl salicylate, the ones that are aromatic. And what you would do there is just chop the plant up, let it dry, and then slowly simmer it in oil for about 30 minutes. It's not going to add much color to the oil, or the color of the oil is going to overpower the violet color for the most part. So I don't even bother trying to just use the petals. I use the whole plant. Then usually after I strain that, I solidify it with beeswax into a salve like this. And this salve, I wish you could smell it. It's very aromatic. This can be rubbed on areas where there's pain. It can be massaged into the scalp. It can be rubbed on joints and so forth. And it's a very, it's one of the main ways that violets have been used medicinally throughout the centuries. Another very traditional and very versatile way of preparing violets is as violet syrup. This is especially a good remedy for children. It's fever and pain reducing, and it's also a mild laxative, and it tastes sweet. So it's made by combining 2 cups of water and 2 cups of sugar in a pan, melting that together, continuously stirring it until it starts to boil, then adding in an equal amount of fresh violet petals and continuing to stir until those have all wilted and sort of cooked down into the liquid, and then letting it sit on a warm burner for 10 minutes or so. Allow it to cool until it's about hot coffee temperature, and then strain it into a clean jar. And for best shelf life, keep that refrigerated and it will keep for months and months. Thanks for watching another episode of The Medicine Show. Hope you find this information useful and that you tell your friends about it. If you have any suggestions for future topics you'd like to see discussed on The Medicine Show, give me a suggestion in the comments. Thanks a lot. Bye.